Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey. What's up, Rich?
This is our Monday injury show. Another little 2 weeks in a row here of no major deaths upon us.
Oh, I know. This has been kind of amazing. We just got a couple of minor boo-boos and some minor maybe players to talk about, but nothing.
Yeah, some
nothing
minor
huge.
Players, some minor boo-boos. Dak went on IR today, but that was already talked about. We have some broken hearts, if that counts as an injury. Daniel Jones gets bumped down to third string quarterback. Not one, not two, but third string quarterback.
I mean, I think that qualifies as an injury for sure for you, and a little bit
out for
me.
the year.
Yeah, I mean, he's done.
Definitely for me.
He's done. The fan club might be closing down, which it's a bummer, man. But Daniel Jones, I mean, he looked like he was kind of pulling his stuff together early on in the day ball tenure there, and listen, he just reverted back and just looks bad again. So I think this is a warranted move by them. They obviously weren't winning with him. Let's see what we can do here with some of these other guys. And in the meantime, we're going to look bad and lose a bunch of games. And who knows, put themselves in position to draft a young quarterback next year.
Yeah, the worst quarterback class we've had since probably Kenny Pickett days. So kudos to them. And trust me, I know how they feel. My team has reverted back as well into the giant pile of poop that it was. So yeah, a lot of fun watching football. This weekend, outside of my favorite team, I had an absolutely abysmal time watching them, but everything else was kudos. Some good games. That game last night with the Chargers and Bengals, man, what a game that was.
No,
you know, those back and forth when you get 3 possessions in under 2 minutes, that's always fun.
That's good. That's good viewing. I don't know if the coaches think that's good ball or anything like that, but good viewing.
Oh, that was the Bills game where they had possession. Was that the Bills game or the Chargers game? I think where they had multiple possessions under 3 minutes.
I don't know. That Bills game was wild too. Kansas City Bills.
A lot of fun football.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, some good quarterback play. Living in Cleveland, you don't get to see that often, so I was very excited. I actually moved Justin Herbert up my dynasty ranks even like more. I moved him back up to. He's really starting to come back into that prime number 3 overall quarterback. Justin Herbert.
He was locked in
with Harbaugh.
He looked really good last night. And listen, I think we didn't know exactly what to expect with Herbert going, obviously getting coached by Harbaugh, who's historically a very run heavy type of guy, but he also is a guy that gets the most out of quarterbacks and always has. And a lot of people were poo-pooing Justin Herbert a lot, in the offseason due to that. And I didn't drop him too much, to be honest.
I never did.
And I was swooping him up quite a bit. So I don't know that I have much to do as far as bumping him up. I might have to maybe in the last couple of weeks, before the last couple of weeks, I might have bumped him down a little bit. So there might be a little bit of a correction to do with my rankings, but he's balling out, man. And Harbaugh is really starting to, I think, put more on his shoulders, and he's proved more than capable of getting it done. So it'll be amazing when they really get maybe a really good young tight end in there, and maybe just one more wide receiver into the mix, obviously.
Yeah, but he's making Quentin Johnson look good. Quentin Johnson's is really starting to put some stuff together here on tape. I know he had those blown coverages, but last night game was not a blown coverage game. I know he had one ball go off his hands, but he's starting to slowly put together. It's amazing what a really good quarterback can do.
He had 2 catches though, only 2 catches out of 8 targets. It's not like he looked good. Like I saw him. I didn't watch that entire game. I was in and out of that game. And when I saw him was when he made the 2 catches, and I thought the same thing. And then I came back and looked at all the stats. I was like, oh,
the stat line,
2 of 8, huh? So there must have been some.
Still feel really good about that. My boy Lad McConkey out there, he's crushing, man. He's going to be a special one. It's going to be a good combo paired with Justin Herbert. So
we'll get into him in a minute. Yeah, let's start on these injuries.
Yeah, let's talk some injuries here. Who do you got up first?
No quarterbacks again, so that's good news. We're going to move right onto the running back position, and we'll kind of do these 2 for 1 because they're same team, same position. Alexander Mattison went down with an ankle injury, and then Zamir White went out with a quad injury. It was down to basically Ameer Abdullah, and that was it. that was active for this past week's game. Obviously, they have Dylan Laube. I don't remember how they'll say that camp's name. Maybe now he'll be active, and I can remember what his name is. But it's going to be those two guys unless they bring somebody else in that's going to.
They also have Sincere McCormick on the roster as well.
Okay. I know that he was on there earlier. I didn't see him on the depth chart, or maybe I just didn't look that far down the depth chart when I was filling this thing out here. But
even if it might be a taxi squad guy they could bring up though too. I mean, yeah, it's wide open there right now. I mean, they're both going to miss probably extended time here. You got to assume Zamir's is a re-aggravation to his previous strain because he had that quad strain before. So that's probably turns it immediately once you re-aggravate into a multiple week dismissal of playing time. Then you got Alexander Matter with the ankle sprain. Don't know how bad it is.
We haven't heard. Yeah. It could be low, could be high. Obviously, high ankle is bad. Low ankle, good news. But we'll see. Right.
He'll still probably miss time. I remember like Joe Mixon didn't seem like it was too bad and he missed multiple weeks. So Ameer Abdullah is the guy here. If you're looking to make a strong push here for the playoffs, you need just some kind of fill in. You probably get Ameer Abdullah pretty cheap. Dylan Laube is a nice pass catcher running back. He does that very well. So there might be some PPR upside there as well. But listen, it seems like we have a dead end coach here, Antonio Pierce. This team is in absolute shambles. The only bright spot on this team right now is Brock Bowers, who's continues on a week in, week out basis to absolutely crush it. But if you're looking for about 10 points from your running back, Ameer Abdullah, Dylan Laube is the way to go. If you had Alexander Mattison and you thought he was a nice bright spot, you're probably a couple weeks out. Should be back in time probably for your playoff push right around week, what was that going to be 15, 16, 17? You expect him either right around there to probably come back or maybe the week beforehand. But right now it's no catastrophe move here. I think it's for everybody we're going to talk about. Like there's no major shakeup of any contenders here we're talking about. But if you're looking for some shallow depth pieces, which again, I encourage all contenders, don't be afraid to go out at this time of year just to make like these big splashes. Like don't be afraid to throw out like those late thirds, late fourth round picks for just some potential depth for the possibility of something popping up last minute like this will be an ankle sprain. Because listen, we've had 2 weeks of really healthy weeks essentially. Like that's outside the norm. Like it means something bad's going to happen soon.
There's a correction coming.
Your chart.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it is. So it's sometimes like we talk about this before. I've talked about this before, but like so many people want to go out there and make those big moves. Like sometimes it's those small moves that you make where you just give up like a third, not for somebody that's necessarily going to start. Maybe it's a receiver, like a DeAndre Hopkins, something along those lines. Maybe there's a Calvin Ridley out there you can get, but somebody out there that you can get to add some depth just in case. Because a lot of times, not every league, I know leagues that we're in, Matt, like our trade deadline is the only deadline we have in our Dynasty trade deadline is for the playoffs. We don't allow playoff teams to make trades once that starts. So if you have a trade deadline at all, it doesn't hurt to add those moves now just in case so you don't get left holding the bag. Definitely if you're at a thin position. Like if I only have 3 running backs, I don't mind adding a guy like Ameer Abdullah for a 4th round pick, like something or anybody of those lines. Maybe you get Kareem Hunt for cheaper now because Isaiah Pacheco's going back. Maybe Jerome Ford is cheaper now, who got a lot of carries this past week. There's going to be somebody out there, some kind of depth chart, some guy like even like a Ray McLeod in Atlanta, like a receiver, somebody you could throw on that roster to support those guys. So no major injury here. Not a lot to expect out of the Raiders. Tyjae Spears for the Titans, Matt. That was another guy, got a concussion, so he's probably out this week. But for somebody who we were excited about to come into this week, not a lot. Again, you're not really missing much here as well. Still going to be a Tony Pollard show going forward.
I mean, honestly, yes, it is. He's been kind of taking that over anyway. Tyjae Spears had 3 attempts and no yards. He's just not clicking this year. I don't know what's going on with him. And really the running game in general last week struggled quite a bit there for Tennessee. 9 carries, only 15 yards for Tony Pollard. He did get involved a little bit in the passing game, a couple of catches, 14 yards. But really, I mean, another offense I'm not dying to get a piece of here towards the end of the season. So the injury is not that catastrophic. Obviously, Tony Pollard's been okay. But again,
Levis has been okay.
He has. I mean, 19 or no, this is our scoring, which is a little bit higher. So it's he was in double digits, probably high
Yeah.
teen double digits.
But on tape, he's looked okay. I mean, for a team that's probably, running back, quarterback might not be their biggest need here. Like you probably expect a likelihood of another year of Will Levis possibly starting out there just for somebody for super flex depth. Is he the next Daniel Jones? Possibly, but there's something there to hold on to at least.
I agree that there's something there to hold on to. We'll see if he continues to develop or if he kind of continues making mistakes and throwing some kind of head scratcher interceptions and that kind of stuff, which he has had a tendency to do. So, I do think he's going to get another year. So Levi's will be, I don't know. I don't know. You can wear those Levi's one more year. They haven't gone out of style yet. But let's move on to the next running back on the list. This one might not be of much consequence, or he might end up missing some time. We'll see. Raheem Mostert went out with a hip there in this past game. He was able to return. Obviously, Jaylen Waddle would be the guy that kind of came in and spelled Devon Achane. I would just expect Achane to get more carries and and Jaylen Waddle to just kind of still get sprinkled in a little bit. Jaylen Waddle just hasn't been producing that much. He doesn't warranted more work when he has got in there. So it's kind of one of those unfortunate occurrences where I was expecting to see more out of Jaylen Waddle this year, and I've been pretty disappointed by what I've seen. So
I still think next year is his year. Like I'm not out on Jaylen Waddle. I think Raheem Mostert's off. Raheem Mostert's already kind of been suppressed a little bit into this lineup, despite his hip. Achane's really kind of taken over that lead back role. Like he's actually the featured running back now, just not even the passing downs. He's still heavily involved in the passing game, but he's really secured that lead role in Miami, which is great to see. So Mostert has really kind of been pushed down here. It's like him and Jaylen Waddle splitting some time. I think Mostert will be on the roster. I think Jaylen Waddle would be a very interesting buy this offseason, but a gamble. They still trade a 3rd round pick next year for him. So I do expect him to get an opportunity to split time. And more importantly, like Achane with his frame, he should be first in line to take over the lead back roles next year in that offense. So that's also very encouraging for Jaylen Waddle overall. But yeah, Mostert, again, another loss here. That's not really a loss.
Right. He's been kind of lost most of the year, so not a big deal as far as anyone really relying on him. So that's good news. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. That was it for the running backs. And Darnell Mooney is probably the biggest
potential loss.
Yeah, the biggest potential loss probably on this thing here. He's Mooney.
Wide receiver 9 overall on a year. What a surprise that is, huh?
Yeah, he's been working his way really out of, from a total obscurity into big time fantasy relevance and in your lineups basically week in and week out. Now he's got a hamstring. It's not believed to be serious, which is good news, but hamstrings are still hamstrings and they could be kind of tricky to get back from. So just pay attention, I guess, to all the practice reports. Ray McLeod is the
good news. Good news on Darnell Mooney is they do have a bye this week. So they are off. So we'll know more the following week. And this is a player you need. I just traded. I'm in a league where I could use the wide receiver depth, and I traded a 2nd round pick for Darnell Mooney for one final push.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's bad if you're making a push. Obviously, it'll be bad if he doesn't get back from this hamstring injury, and it's worse than they're letting on, I guess, at this point. But
the report I read today was better than they anticipated.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And the guys that are going to pick up the slack, if he does miss some time, you mentioned him. Ray McLeod is a guy that he was 2nd on the team to Drake London as far as targets.
Better than Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, no kidding. Kyle Pitts
only did he catch that one football?
Yeah, he one catch, 9 yards on 3 targets there for Kyle Pitts, while Ray McLeod went 6 for 6 with 46 yards. So I would think Ray McLeod's the guy to kind of go out and grab if you have to grab somebody in an emergency, Darnell Mooney kind of fill-in type of thing. There's Kaderil Hodge, obviously, on that roster as well. He had a couple of targets, a couple of receptions, 22 yards. But I would think Ray is the kind of guy that's the move.
Oh, 100%. He's been producing. You had to throw Ray in your McLeod. I've been seeing a lot of lineups. I put him in a couple of lineups. He's a sneaky double-digit point guy here and there.
He is. He'll pop up every once in a while. He'll flare up every once in a while.
Achilles tendonitis.
Exactly. Like a bad Achilles. Um, let's move on to the next wide receiver on the list. Gabe Davis went down with a meniscus injury, and yeah, peace out for Gabe for the year. It sounds like that.
Yeah, coach came out about an hour ago. Doug Peterson said he is done for the year.
Yeah, I mean, again, unfortunately, not a big loss. He hasn't been doing much of anything, so no one's relying on him. I know Gabe Davis is kind of a name, but to me, he was always a lot more name than game. So,
yeah, and we talked about this last week, like avoiding this offense. I will say now, though, this really pushes your Evan Ingram shares up to tier 1 tight end levels. And again, it pushes Brian Thomas up as well. They'll just be peppered with targets. So you get it's really narrowed that the looks there with Christian Kirk out as well. So you got to be somewhat excited if you're on the opposite end of that. But Gabe Davis has been what Gabe Davis has always been.
Streaky.
And that's somebody you cannot put in your starting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's the kind of guy you don't even want to have on your roster.
No,
the temptation of putting him in.
Exactly. He's Marquez Valdez Scantling. You know what I mean? Like those guys are living the same place in my fantasy brain. They're fine every once in a while if they hit. For an NFL team, that's great. I mean, they can stretch the field, they can do some things. Mm-hmm. But from a fantasy standpoint, you never know when that 20-point game's coming. And most of the time, if it's not there, it's a 2 to 3 point game, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, Fokker.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Moving on to the next person, you kind of mentioned Lad McConkey a bit, but he did have a shoulder injury. He missed a little bit of time in the game, was able to return, thankfully. But I just wanted to mention it in case he missed any practice time or anything like that with the shoulder injury, and maybe he's a questionable going into the week or anything. I just wanted to throw him on here. Darius Davis
came back in. Yeah, he came back in and played. Not only did he play, he was better after he came back in. I mean, this is a player. If you follow our Twitter accounts, if you listen to this podcast, this is a player I've been big on. I said 5 weeks ago, there's wide receiver 1 incoming. There's no way that he shouldn't be seeing a majority of the targets, right? Like he should be seeing about 30% of all targets. His route running from day one, he got into this offense has been pristine. The more he grows with Justin Herbert, and the fact that he's tied to Justin Herbert makes him such a very exciting dynasty prospect. Like somebody that I don't have enough shares of, somebody that I would love to overpay today for an underpay tomorrow kind of guy. And it's only going to get better. They have no incentive to go out there and add another receiver to the caliber. Like we need a number 1 because they have their number 1. And in fact, they spent a number 1 on Quentin Johnson too. And overall, I don't know how they feel about Quentin Johnson. I think he probably serves at least his role there in the offense well. I think their number 1 need could be a really good tight end because Herbert's shown, like even what he did with Will Disley last night, like what he can do with a tight end that could like stretch the seam. And Will Disley had a nice 18-point game as well last night. And Will Disley, who's primarily in Seattle, was like used as just as a blocker, but he showed flashes of like he could be a receiving tight end out there, and so always showed that. Really showed it again last night. Like there's something there possibly. So they might tap into something there with Will Disley to make them. They don't even need that position, and they can just build that line, build the running game. I mean, I'm saying he is.
Will Disley's biggest thing has always been injuries. He's always been nicked up and missing big chunks of time, which is, I think, kind of why
Disley over there.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking injury show, and we're talking Will Disley. I got to at least mention that the dude's just been injured. So
he has been a ton.
Yeah, but when he plays, I agree. Like once he works himself into a lineup and kind of gets the confidence of whoever the play caller and the quarterback are, he has a tendency to play well and produce at a pretty good level. So
since he was a rookie.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So he's a sneaky guy. I mean, but the unfortunate thing is you never know when the legs are going to get swept out from underneath you kind of with the injury bug.
I'll tell you what, man, the depth, when you talk about dynasty and depth and those depth surprises that make you happy in our 20-year-old league, George Kittle got the hamstring injury, and I'm super thin at tight end in that league, but I do have Will Disley, and I slid Will Disley in there at the last minute, and I got those 18 points, and I was like, I didn't need them to win, but like still, it was like, oh, look at this. You need all those points, right? Like all the points count when it comes to league standing. So
absolutely,
it was nice to see.
And you mentioned it there. You mentioned it there, George Kittle. That's our last injury of the day. He was injured last week, and we missed. He didn't make the show. I just want to mention it that he, obviously he missed this past week. And it's a hamstring injury, so he could very well miss next week as well. So keep an eye on that, and have backup plans and all that good stuff for anybody.
And he was a game time decision.
Got
out there, and somebody who's shown out there, and somebody you can go out and get for a second round pick, and who's 100% worth the second round pick is Jaylen Jennings, who's been on fire since Ayuk went down, and look for that to continue. I mean, and watching Jaylen Jennings play, you got to assume, man, the 49ers are really kicking themselves and the tuchus there saying, why did we pay Brandon Ayuk $30 million when we already re-signed Jaylen Jennings, and we could have got like a first round pick for Ayuk and just drafted another guy, not paying $30 million, and rolled with Debo, Jaylen Jennings, and Kittle and Pearsall too. Like it just, or even get rid of Debo too and then run with Pearsall and Jennings. I mean, Jennings looks so good out there. And for somebody who, I got a lot of Jaylen Jennings shares like off the waiver wire from when he first came out a couple years ago. And so I have a lot of Jaylen Jennings shares. It's been very nice to see him really step up and essentially give you low end wide receiver 1 numbers, and look for that to continue as well. So another player, like if he's out there for a second round pick, and I know I got him for a second round pick in leagues where I didn't have him. If you're making a title push, when it comes to second round pick value, that's probably as good as it could probably get.
It's safe. I agree. They're looking for him on all the third downs. He's moving the chains. He's doing the dirty work, man. He was dragging Seattle defenders like 2 or 3 yards to get a first down at one point there. So that coaching staff and the quarterback's just going to love that. So
they're in sync, man. So good week overall. Really glad to hear no more injuries. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop here though, for something bad, and it's happening. Like we're losing quarterbacks. Pretty, like, I know it hasn't been crazy, but we have, like, in hindsight of the year, lost 25% of our quarterbacks, essentially. The receiving thing has really slowed down. Surprisingly, the running backs have been the cleanest option, like, this year. Like running backs have been not only producing at a high level, but also been the really good guys have been pretty damn healthy the whole entire year.
I mean, I agree. I'm looking right now, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that are on IR. And that's Pacheco, Marshawn Lloyd, who tried to come off and then had appendicitis. And then it's like Tyler Beatty, Kendry Miller, and Zach Moss. So, I mean, it's
and Pacheco's back next week.
Yeah, Pacheco's coming back. So it's very limited as far as the long-term injuries there at the running back position, which is great. I mean, it's already a thin position. So if you start,
I am curious how that's going to work out with Pacheco and Kareem Hunt.
So am I. I mean, I have Kareem Hunt, and he's been in my starting lineup every single day, or every single week rather. And now that Pacheco is scheduled to be back next week, that's going to get dicey for sure. You got to hope.
I would assume short yardage situations. I would assume, and obviously they're probably going to ease Pacheco back in as well.
They probably will. I mean, but they're both good at that. You know what I mean? They're both hard runners. They're both physical guys. I would say Kareem Hunt's probably better in the passing game, which is good news for his fantasy value. So,
yeah, definitely. And we know how they like to use those. They actually like to use the passer running back later down the stretch as well, as the cold weather starts to change a little bit out there in Kansas City as well. So excited to see. We inch every day a little bit closer to the playoffs. We have 3 more weeks of the fantasy season. It's that close. So these are the final pushes. I can't wait to talk about it on tomorrow's show. All the topics we can get through there. And then we're in the off season. As we know in Dynasty, there is no off season. So exciting times. It goes by quick, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, man. I can't wait to get it kicked off.
It's amazing how when the Browns are so crappy, sometimes I just can't wait for at the end.
The off season.
Like
can this be over? My team is no longer even remotely competitive. Can we please just move on?
highest paid offense in the NFL, and they are incompetent and in line to get the number 1 overall pick. So, but as a Browns fan for 40 years, not surprising in the least bit whatsoever. This is literally the story of my life. Nothing's good ever. Nothing's sustainable. Everything's bad. I don't know what a good quarterback is besides Baker, but we got rid of him for a pervert. So Yep. Here we are. I'm gonna go cry on my pillow now. I'll see you tomorrow.
So it sounds good. Adios.
Smoochy noochies.